Hi everyone, it's Jasmine. On today's episode of the Slain Project, we will be talking about the case of Cody White Pipe, who was killed by hit and run in South Dakota in September 2014. The person who did this to him has never been identified. If you would like to hear more cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people, please subscribe to my channel and make sure that you click the notification bell. Let's get into it. Cody White Pipe was an enrolled member of Oglala Lakota from the Pine Ridge Reservation. His close family and friends called him Petey. He was born on April 1st, 1993, to Marvin White Pipe and Tyrell Ringing Shield. He was a very social person and always tried to make those around him happy. He also knew a bit about fixing cars and would lend a hand whenever he could. He was just an all-around good guy. Cody had close family and friends on both the Pine Ridge Reservation and the neighboring Rosebud Sioux Reservation. He would often walk between the two reservations and get rides from people he knew along the way. This is commonplace on reservations. There is often no public transportation. Cody didn't have any problems doing this until the early morning hours of Tuesday, September 9th, 2014. There was a super moon during this time that started at sunset on Monday, September 8th. There would have been a lot of light outside during the moonlight hours. He was leaving Rosebud and walking towards Porcupine on the Pine Ridge Reservation. He was headed that way to attend a friend's funeral later in the day on Tuesday. The route he would take would bring him from the Rosebud Reservation to Bennett County, then to the Pine Ridge Res. Bennett County is positioned between Rosebud Res and Pine Ridge Res in a checkered board-like layout. This county falls under state jurisdiction and is not federal like the two Indian reservations. Bennett County has been a hotly disputed topic that stems from it being ancestral land of the Lakota. There are areas in a county that are on trust Indian land, where the occupants do not pay taxes. This has upset the locals who would like to see more tax dollars coming in. As a result, there are racial tensions. Could Cody have been targeted because of his race? It is a definite possibility. Cody was walking along Highway 18. At about 5 a.m. on September 9th, a lady was driving along the highway at milepost 173 when she noticed a red bandana waving at her from the ditch. She pulled over to see what was going on and encountered Cody in the ditch. He had been struck by an unknown vehicle and was desperately trying to get himself some help in the dark early morning hours. The Good Samaritan called 911. Cell service was spotty, so it took a little bit to get the call through and get help dispatched. She also stayed with Cody and gave him what comfort she could until help arrived. Cody was transported to the Bennett County Hospital about 20 miles away from where he was found in Martin, South Dakota. Doctors tried their best to save Cody, but he died of his injuries. He was only 21 years old. Lieutenant David Berkeley of the South Dakota Highway Patrol said that they are unsure of how much time passed from when Cody was hit to when he was found. Seeing that Cody did not communicate this, or the type of vehicle that struck him, I think after he found help, he slowly started to drift away. If he did not fight so hard for help, who knows how long he would have laid outside before someone found him. Cody was laid to rest at the Lady of Lourdes Catholic Cemetery in Porcupine, South Dakota, on September 15, 2014. The person who hit Cody and the vehicle involved has never been identified. On September 20th, 11 days after the accident, family and friends went to the spot where Cody was found on the highway. They blessed the area and put up a cross in his honor. Inspection of the area still showed the tire tracks of the vehicle that ran over Cody. The tracks were on both sides of the highway. There are only two reasons that I could think of why there would be tracks on both sides of the highway. Number 1. He was accidentally hit and the driver pulled around to see what they hit and left after they saw Cody. Number 2. He was deliberately hit and the driver possibly hit him multiple times. In either one of these scenarios, Cody would most likely would have been hit at a higher rate of speed. I do think this is the case because the position of the cross seems to indicate that he was thrown a good distance from the side of the highway. Police have never released any info regarding the case. The most that seems to have been done was a memo release asking for information shortly after he died. The Pine Ridge Reservation has a long history of violence. There has been a lot of blood spilled on its land. Leading up into present day, there have been a lot of mysterious deaths and disappearances on the Pine Ridge Res where Cody was from. Here are some of the more well-known historical cases that have occurred here. In 1874, General Custer was sent to the Black Hills to survey the land for new fort locations and routes to the west. Gold was soon discovered and the government would force out the Sioux tribes from their sacred land. This dispute would climax with the death of General Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn in Montana in 1876. This is one of only 2 times that natives or any other group of people defeated the U.S. Army in battle. The first was the Battle of the Wabash, also known as St. Clair's defeat. The repercussions of these victories for the tribes were tragic. They won these battles, but not the war. On December 29, 1890, Chief Spotted Elk, also known as Bigfoot, and his followers were traveling to Pine Ridge. They were coming from the Cheyenne River Reservation with some of Sitting Bull's followers to seek refuge after the murder of Sitting Bull at the Standing Rock Reservation. They were going to Pine Ridge to meet up with Red Cloud. Bigfoot was very ill. He had pneumonia and could barely even stand. Cold, tired, and hungry, Bigfoot's followers of men, women, and children were all gunned down by the U.S. Army and dumped into a mass grave. The estimates of natives murdered this day range from 150 to 350 people. They just had their weapons confiscated and had white flags above their teepees. This event is known as the Wounded Knee Massacre. In 1973, a group of about 200 AIM members occupied the Wounded Knee Massacre site. AIM stands for the American Indian Movement. The goal of their siege was to have the U.S. government review and investigate broken treaties between the government and all Sioux reservations in South Dakota. 2 natives died and many more were wounded. The group eventually surrendered when officials promised to investigate their complaints. 2 leaders were arrested, but the charges were dropped over unlawful handling of witnesses and evidence. In 1975, a member, Leonard Peltier, was arrested and eventually convicted of the shooting deaths of 2 FBI agents in Pine Ridge. 2 others were also charged with the murder of these FBI agents, but they were acquitted at trial. Leonard was tried separately and received 2 life terms. A lot of people believe he was wrongly convicted and is a political prisoner. The evidence presented seems to be tailored to ensure his conviction. There were scores of other murders on the Pine Ridge Reservation throughout the 1970s. These were well documented in an article published called the Pine Ridge Report. One of the cases documented was that of Betty Means. On July 3, 1976, she was found along Highway 18, several miles east of Pine Ridge. She also died by hit and run like Cody. The investigation states that a male was driving and that his passenger jerked the wheel towards Betty when she was walking. This was a deliberate attack on her life. On December 2nd, 1976, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sioux Falls declined to prosecute the driver. He left the scene of an accident, but he was not in violation of federal law. On July 8, 1977, the passenger who jerked the wheel, Arlene Goodvoice, pled guilty to assault and received a sentence of 18 months probation on August 22, 1977. These two individuals were Goon members, and Betty was an AIM member. Goon stands for Guardians of the Oglala Nation. They were a military type of group formed by a corrupt tribal chairman named Dick Wilson. He was on tribal council from 1972 to 1976. In present day, the Pine Ridge Res struggles with poverty, unemployment, alcoholism, drug abuse, and suicide. These problems are the after effects of all the tragic history and has been churning away for generations. The Lakota have endured so much, but yet they have a great sense of pride and culture. The tragic death of Cody White Pipe has deeply affected his family. He was loved by so many, and his loss is felt every day. He was just minding his business as he walked along the highway, trying to get to his friend's funeral. Cody was a son, brother, uncle, and friend. Cody and his family were robbed of his existence. He probably was on the road early to make sure he made it to his destination on time. I do hope the person responsible for this will speak up and own up to what they did. Cody's sister Jo has stated that law enforcement has not updated the family on any progress in the investigation. The only time they ever spoke to them is when they went to ID Cody's body. Please speak up if you have any information about the unsolved hit-and-run death of Cody White Pipe. Anything you heard may be helpful bringing justice for Cody. Please contact the South Dakota Attorney General's Office tip line at 605-773-3215 or 605-394-1884. That's all I have for you today. I will be linking Cody's Facebook page, Justice for Cody White Pipe, in the description box. And if you had any memories of Cody, please share them in the comment section. Cody is gone, but not forgotten. May he rest in peace.